You've probably heard of 3D printing. Back 4 months ago, two of the leading 3D printing companies, MakerBot and UltiMaker, merged into UltiMaker. And so now the combined company is offering the printers and the technology that both companies were offering before and developing cool new stuff. But they also offer some interesting services. So if you're looking at 3D printing for your own company, whether that's designing parts or designing things for your production facilities, but you can't quite figure out what to do, you may want to talk to these guys. Stay tuned and you'll hear all about what they have to offer here on Manufacturing Talks.
Welcome to Manufacturing Talks with Jim Vinosky. Industry has a million cool stories, and Jim talks to the movers and shakers who are making them happen. Let's dive in.
Hi, welcome to Manufacturing Talks. I'm Jim Vinosky, your host. We're sponsored by DYS Media, and you're going to learn more about them about midway through our show. I'm pleased today to have joining me Nadav Goshen. He is the CEO of UltiMaker. Welcome, Nadav.
Thank you for having me, Jim.
No, thanks for joining us. This one's an interesting one. So UltiMaker, tell us about yourself and the company real quickly, and then we'll dive into the details.
Sure. So UltiMaker is a well-known name in 3D printing, but recently we changed the capitalization of the name with a capital M, which is now a new formed company, which is the merged entity that is encapsulating both UltiMaker and MakerBot. So last year, we merged the two companies and we took off MakerBot out from Stratasys, which was our parent company, and we joined with UltiMaker to form the new capital M UltiMaker, which I'm leading now.
Yeah, and you had been leading UltiMaker before the merger. Is that correct?
I was leading MakerBot before the merger, and then
MakerBot. Yeah. Thank you for the correction. Yeah, so you're not new to the 3D printing world by any means.
No.
However, I did see in poking around on your LinkedIn profile that you got started with an arts degree in cinema and television. So that got me wondering how that led to the 3D printing business.
It's an interesting journey, and so for me, I think I've been running tech companies for almost more than a decade, and I think my more prominent experience is running software companies. Mm-hmm. And the way it turned out is I was coding since I was a teenager. And when I got to university, I didn't feel I need to learn something technical. On the contrary, I was lecturing as an assistant for professor in the computer science division. So therefore I said, it's better off for me to learn something else. And I chose cinematography because I think everything starts with a storytelling ability. Mm-hmm. If you cannot tell and differentiate between what's important and, how you get there and communicate it, you won't be able to succeed in any business. And I think that kind of drove me to kind of a leadership position in both software companies and running them. So I think there is a thread between that, and also on a funny note, when you are an art student, resources are scarce. So you also need to kind of hover around yourself a bunch of kids at that time. Right. Try to pick up some, heavy equipment and, promise them the world and kind of join them together to produce your dream, which was then a short film. So it also gives you a lot of kind of late management skill. So this is how I got into, how does that contribute to my journey?
Well, that is a very interesting story. And I agree that kind of creativity side, too many technical people ignore. And I think you're right. There's an element of business where if you're pure technical, you're going to be missing some skill sets there. So I applaud you for the decision. That's really neat.
Thank you.
And so then you mentioned that you had spent time really running the software companies, software businesses. Talk more about that, and then how that led in the direction of 3D printing.
Oh yeah, that's another interesting one, because I think like I ran few software companies in different areas, like from mobile gaming to advertising and communities. And when I joined Stratasys, I also ran GrabCAD, which is the software subsidiary of Stratasys, where we developed like enterprise SaaS for manufacturing. And in parallel to that, I also ran MakerBot, which is a hardware company.
Right.
So I think that the notion that like hardware today is enabled by software was in my mind even when I joined MakerBot. And so I think the idea that like at the end of it, I think we have a physical device, but that device is kind of a robotic equipment, and that the most important thing is the interfaces that it has with other element of the process. And I think when you look about 3D printing, this is extra important, because the workflow from what we call CAD design to the actual part is so lengthy and involves so many tools in the way. Then the hardware itself is only one element of it. Right. So if you want to really develop a solution, if you want to really develop a complete product, you need to invest more in these interfaces than on the mechanical properties of the machine, and specifically on machines like we have in 3D printing, which are, we do alchemy. We take a material, we change its substance, and then make it, liquefy it, and then solidify it, and having that on a micron level. So all of that requires a lot of integration. And I think the good thing about software, it has a built-in integration in place. So that is kind of how we think about that. And I think like it's now it's known. You look at like companies like Tesla or DJI, where like it's all about integration, it's all about automation, it's all about the software behind it. I think this is where we're heading.
So that itself, like you said, is a very interesting piece of the story. And certainly as people think about 3D printing, I think they would kind of know that there's a software element there. But even as you think about more subtractive machining, certainly, old guys like me remember the days of the manual lathes and milling machines and all that, but those don't really exist anymore. And that's also heavily integrated with software as well. And the very little we make anymore isn't, right?
Yeah, and I think look at like all of them. I was talking about robotics in general. All of robotics enabled tool sets, whatever that is, like from a a robot arm to a CNC machine to a 3D printing. All of them has very high components of software integrations, which are crucial to the success of the tool. So I think like if you understand that, and then you even expand that and say, okay, this is like let's call it the core functionality or the core of the machine, but then it has to interact with the person. So all of that interface to the person, to the workflow, to the manufacturing floor, all of that, like in GrabCAD and in Stratasys, where we kind of opened and changed the way machine interacts with other element of the manufacturing floor, software element of the manufacturing floor. It was not natural, but more when you look into that, it's crucial to the success. So same with what we do here in UltiMaker. And we have a lot of elements which are not focusing only on the tool itself, more about the interaction it has with the user, with their applications, with everything that they want to achieve with our printers.
Right. Yeah. So if we drill back on that, you had been running MakerBot, and then it merged with UltiMaker. Tell us a little bit about what the two companies brought to the integrated company. Was it different 3D printing methods? Was it different materials? Both? What were were the components and what do they add up to now?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think UltiMaker and MakerBot were competitors in some way, and I think merger is a very, very complex business drill to make, and specifically when you're doing within competitors. And in what we chose to do, we chose when we decided on the merger that we'll do that as a merger of equals, which means instead of looking who is better, we're looking how can we take from each side what will make the new UltiMaker better. And so that drove all of the decisions that we made. And I think when we look into that, by the way, and just talking about software, for example, both companies had, cloud solutions, digital factory on the UltiMaker side, and what we call cloud print on the MakerBot side. And then when we kind of smashed the team together, some in New York, some in the Netherlands, and we tasked them to say, listen, we want to build the best workflow for our users. So pick and choose what components you want to have from each side. So then we just, combine and build a new thing. So each company had, better features in that direction and better features in the other direction. So combined, we're building something new. And what you asked, what is the strength of the combined company? We have, I think, the widest portfolio in FDM 3D printing in a price point. We have, 3 different platforms that we develop. We have one combined, workflow. We have Cura. We have Thingiverse. So all of that, for example, kind of builds this presence in the market. And I think also looking from the market perspective, we are based in New York and in the Netherlands. So we have now very strong foothold in both sides of the world, and kind of that translates into how close can we be to our customers. So when you look into that, I think the combined company has a much more strength and power in the market to make a change.
Yeah. So for those who aren't up to speed on 3D printing, can you fill us in what FDM is and kind of the basics of that technology?
Yes. And yes. So I think 3D printing is the actual technology to take and additive manufacture something, which means layer by layer in different type of technology form a part out of zero, which is very different than other manufacturing technologies, which uses other techniques like subtractive, milling, etc. So that's the overall 3D printing world. It's called 3D printing, but it's kind of interchangeable with additive manufacturing. And within that, there are few core technologies. One of them is what we call FFF or FDM, which is fuse deposition. It basically a hot gun, which is very precise, very thin, that builds the part by depositing layers of melted plastic or other polymer and sometimes metals into a bed, and then creates the part from it. So I think that's the FDM, and we're specializing in this technology.
Okay. Yep. Just plastics for you guys, or are you into other?
We do metals as well. We launched a few months ago a complete metal solution, and that you can just now print on a sub 5K printer a metal part, which is very, very unique, and you can sinter it, and you can have a real metal solution in a cost base which was not available before.
That's amazing. I actually had a question that's kind of far afield, but it kind of fits right now. So I was reading our local robotics team's blog recently, and they were talking about, I think it goes back, I don't know, 6 or 7 years ago, they got their first foray into additive manufacturing, and they bought at the beginning one, and I think they wound up buying several MakerBot 3D printers. So, why would they have made that choice, and why do you think that they made the right choice there?
I think they made a good choice because I think there is a very strong linkage between robotic arms and 3D printing, and specifically to machines that can produce dimensional, accurate parts, like the Method series and others, and that we have. And I think the reason for is because the robotic arm is a generic tool, and what makes it unique is the end effector, the gripper, or what's at the end of that robotic arm. And each one has their own applications. And to do so, you need to either, design a part and then send it out, outsource to get like in aluminum or anything else, or you can just iterate and 3D print that end effector and make that robot versatile. So I think like a lot of automation is brought into the manufacturing floor using robots and 3D printers.
Sure.
Because now they can take the same robot and use it for multiple applications just by printing different end effectors. And these end effectors, by the way, can cost between, $10,000 in the previous world. And now we can bring it down. This is where I think your team was smart to choose a solution that can bring the same part, the same quality in a much lower price point. And I think this is what kind of will fuel the adoption of both. And I can give you, like, for example, with a case study. There was a manufacturing of, I think it was a meat, kind of meat, and they used robot and our printers, and this time the UltiMaker S5 printer, to build this gripper with the material which is approved for food. So they use that to kind of pick that, the thing from the line and just move it to the packaging assembly line. So all of that is really happening where we see like these robots and 3D printer kind of match together and automate, the manufacturing line.
Right. Yep. Well, I definitely want to jump back into the business side of things. Before we do that, we're going to jump over right now, hear from our sponsor, DYS Media, hear what they have to offer you guys. We'll be back in a minute.
DYS Media, your digital media relations agency. Public relations, website design, digital marketing. You get found by the customers and talent who need your solutions. You get media placements in top publications, the best job candidates coming to your website, a digital presence that gets you found by the right people. Call 616-298-8798 to get started today.
Okay, we're back. Manufacturing Talks with Jim Vinosky, and today joined by Nadav Goshen of UltiMaker. He's the CEO over there, 3D printing company he's been telling us about. So again, getting back into the business, you've now integrated MakerBot and UltiMaker together. Now that you've made that initial integration, what are the challenges as you look forward with kind of your expanded portfolio?
So I think we are like maybe 4 months into the merger, and we took the decision to do it quickly, and to bring these two companies together as soon as we can, because I believe that when you do such a complex merger, time is not in your favor, because the most challenging element is the human that run the company. And we need to make sure that they are kind of, we feel one. And one of our OKRs for the year is build one company. So it's very important for us to make sure that like we're doing it. So once we are kind of, completing that, what we see now in the market is that we have that footprint that was missing for both sides. Right. We have this, very, very, very deep portfolio that we can come to our customers, to our resellers, and tell them, like, instead of working with 6 different vendors, work with us, and then we can cover the full solutions that you require. That's one thing. We launched, I think, a month ago, the S7, which is a new printer in our product line, and this kind of comes on top of what is, I think, the industry standard for desktop 3D printing, the S5. So we have, thousands of users using, these machines, and I think coming together now with this kind of joint power, we can really go to customers and our partners and just really empower them to go to the market. So I think these are the challenges for us, is to keep on this integration, to make sure that we are really building one company, but also to leverage what we have from both sides, and to kind of really speak to customers, speak to partners, to make sure that we're kind of pushing 3D printing together.
I have to imagine, I mean, you brought together two companies that were both well known for their innovation. And so you get some really smart people on both sides coming up with these products. Is it a challenge to bring those R&D and engineering teams together, or are they kind of naturally meshing and working on both sides of the equation now?
It's such an interesting process, because you start one day and you kind of meet with your most prominent competitor, and then you look into them, and then you say they're really me. And I think I've seen that so many teams that come together, and you're right, there is so much talent in both companies, but the good thing about that is all of us wants to do the best we can and to innovate in 3D printing. So once you kind of cross that first initial, I would say, competitiveness that you had in the past, when you shake this off, then you really see what it is. And I just met one of our department leaders yesterday in the office, and he said, and I asked him, what do you think about this and that are kind of from the New York office? And he says, you know what? They're very similar to the people we have in the Netherlands. And I said, so I think this is what is fun about it, that you start as a, kind of with a bit of, I would say, critical point of view. But then when you talk to them, you see, really, these are smart people that know a lot about 3D printing, and they have different approach. And now how can I just talk to them and work with them to move it forward? So I think that cycle is what's kind of happening. And I think this is, going back to the challenge is to change the mindset of people from, the past to the future.
Right.
And so I think that's what we're trying to do. And the team here is doing a great job kind of moving it forward.
Good. So now within the integrated company, as you look out, say 1 year, 3 years, 5 years, what do you see as the biggest opportunities out there that you're not currently serving, maybe some new growth opportunities or different technologies? So as I said, we had a very significant, what we call NPI, new product introduction, with the S7, and we will continue to introduce new product to the market. So that combined R&D power that you mentioned has the ability to really drive and get new product to the market. So you will hear more from us. So that's because now we have, instead of doing one product in 2 years, now we can do 3 products in 2 years. So I think that the level of innovation that we can bring to the market will increase. So that's a huge opportunity for us. Second, I think we are in a place in the market where 3D printing is not a novelty. It's already there. What is missing is, how do you integrate it into the current customers' applications? And you need to serve, we spoke about the robotic, challenge that they have, how to make a robot arm practical and versatile within the manufacturing floor. So this is an application. So the way we're going to go forward is we're going to identify these applications, and we tailor
a solution that is dedicated for that kind of application. And we did that with education, where we looked into the customer, and the customer is a teacher. And the challenges for teachers are different than the challenges of engineers. And you cannot tell them, here is the same product, and go figure how you use it in the classroom. So we took that initiative and we said, okay, it's a printer, we have it, but you as a teacher require this, this, and that, and you need to integrate that into your classroom, and you need to understand how to teach with that. And we will provide you with all of the elements that you are required to be successful in your job, which is teaching. So take that to the same engineer that is now trying to build an end effector to the robots. And instead of giving them the tool and tell them, go figure, we will focus, and we are focusing on solving the full solution to them. And we have great solutions for prototyping. And again, when we go to this industrial designer or into this mechanical engineer that want to prototype, they are in the process of bringing a new product to the market. They need the agility. They need the speed that is coming from a desktop 3D printer which is next to them. So they can just start a print in the afternoon, come the day after, see their design, and then either continue with that or scrap it and say, like, that's not a good idea. So that kind of way that we look into the market, we will deliver solutions to specific type of customers that will make their life easier. The tool will be 3D printing, but we will not be offering them a machine. We will be offering them a complete solution tailored to their application.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Something I hadn't ever thought about, and I've written fairly extensively about 3D printing. But yeah, as you talked about it, I was thinking there's got to be people out there who can benefit from it, but they don't have their own internal knowledge of what 3D printing can do or what they can do with it necessarily. So you providing that assistance, that service on the engineering and design side has got to really open up additional opportunities for you guys, right?
I think if we want to scale the technology, which is like, we are in the stage that like it was a very, very inspiring technology, but we didn't, as an industry, we didn't invest enough in making it a solution or an application, because we said it's such an innovative technology, we'll bring the technology to the engineers, to the designers, and there are smart people, they will figure this out. Right. They could, but they have different tasks at hand.
Right. Yeah.
They need to do their work.
Yeah. Their day job.
Exactly what they're being paid for. And they want the tool to work for them. They don't want to work for the tool.
Right.
And I think what kind of blocked the adoption is that you need to have a specific profession, which is a 3D printing operator. When you understand that there is a 3D printing operator in a company, something is wrong. Okay? Yeah. Because it should be, it's like having like, I'll be, blunt here, having like a CAD operator for an industrial designer, right? Mm-hmm. They need to operate their tools because it is part of their day-to-day. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to make this 3D printer as easy to use like their CAD software, which is a complex part of their kind of work. They need to know that, but it works.
Yep.
Right now, it doesn't work. So I think this is the way we're going to do that in UltiMaker. I think the way that we look at the market, the way that we look into what our purpose in that is really to accelerate additive manufacturing, and so it will be wider used. And I think to do that, we need just to focus out of the tool and focus on the customer, on the applications, and the solution that we can provide to them.
Wonderful. Well, we're getting toward the end of our time here, Nadav. Let me throw you this. Is there something we haven't covered that folks ought to know about what the new and improved UltiMaker has going on?
No, I think like I'm excited for what's ahead of us, because like, as I said, like we have the greatest minds in the company. We also have, this position in time where now the technology is matured. It's still needs to go into this stage of adoption, which we focusing on. And the second thing is, like, as we said, like going back to software, going back to, what can be done. We, in UltiMaker and in general, I think we will be focusing not on the actual printer itself. We will be focusing on the full workflow. We will be focusing on the customers. So I think that's a great opportunity for us. And I think this is what gets me excited to say, like, this is like a next stage of this 3D printing revolution, which we all been waiting for.
Excellent. Okay. Well, Nadav Goshen, CEO of UltiMaker, thank you for joining us here on Manufacturing Talks.
It was very great to speak to you, Eugene. Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. And thank you all out there for tuning in. And we come out every first and third Tuesday of every month. So look for new episodes. We'll be providing them. Take care.
Thanks for tuning in to Manufacturing Talks with Jim Vinosky. Watch for new episodes dropping on the first and third Tuesdays of every month.